All right, we are going to get this party started. I'm just trying to get our Facebook thing set up here. Again, I apologize, it's our first time.
Yeah, we're streaming. We use a program called Zoom, as you folks know, but we're also simultaneously posting it on Facebook Live with a bit of a automatic delay. So,
yeah. All right, so we'll get started. We want to thank everyone for joining us to our first ever public webinar. Yeah. It's kind of like our Trail Tales TV, but now it's very much interactive. So back and forth with everyone. And today we're going to be talking about winter ATV and UTV trails and funding. There's two portions of that we're going to hit on today. I was saying earlier before we started that I think the snow in southern Wisconsin was jinxed by our presentation, maybe, because we'd like to usually do this before the snow falls, but
and I would add, after we go through that part at the tail end, we're also going to be talking about some legislation that affects the things that we're talking about. And hopefully we can get folks to get active, and we'll talk about that at the end. But those are the 3 points. So I would start by introductions. My name is Randy Harden, president of the Wisconsin ATV UTV Association. We're sitting here in the offices of our organization in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So we'll be introducing some of the crew. Not everybody can make it, but we'll be doing that in a minute. So Adam, how about yourself?
Adam Harden, I take care of the, I guess, of the IT infrastructure for WATVA, and do a lot of that kind of work. But I'm also on the ORV Council as the vice president. So the ORV Council, we'll talk about that tonight a little bit, and what our role is regarding the funding for our trails.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about we jump to...
let's do Hank's introduction.
Okay, yeah. We got one of our guys a bit under the weather. Everybody can see him up there?
They can if he talks, but...
Okay, yeah. Hank Wozniel is with us. There he is.
Hello. Yeah, it's Hank Wozniel. I'm on the board of directors for WATVA, and I also work on special projects.
There's a lot of special projects.
All right. All right.
Let's go to Rob. Rob, you want to unmute yourself? There you go.
Hey, this is Rob McConnell. I am the vice president of the Wisconsin ATV Association, and I also serve as the Southwest Regional Coordinator. And also, like Adam, I chair the Off-Road Vehicle Council, and I'm the co-chair on the Off-Highway Motorcycle Council. So that's what keeps me out of trouble for right now.
I said president. I meant chair. I'm vice chair.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Rob. Why don't we go to Terry?
My name is Terry Gopleen, a Northeast Regional Coordinator. I'm not sure what the title is, but I'll be working with the Trail Town program come 2020. Currently, I'm in Florida, and I have the air conditioner on because it's really hot here. But other than that, I'm ready and raring to go.
You know, with remarks like that, we should mute him all the time.
I should just mute him. Yeah.
And now for a non-board member, but we ask this next panelist, because we're going to be talking funding. So Jillian, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Hi there, I'm Jillian Steffes with the Wisconsin DNR. I'm the ATV UTV Grant Program Manager. I'm physically located in Rhinelander, but I cover the whole state.
Great.
This is Jillian's first year in this role. She was a, we call those regional grant manager.
Yep. Before this, I was a regional project manager covering Oneida, Vilas, and the northern counties up in this area. So I've worked with the ATV program since about 2010.
We appreciate Jillian coming back in. And again, when we're talking some of this stuff, Rob and Adam can talk on the council, but sometimes we just wanted to be sure from the agency that runs it that we don't speak out of bounds or if there's questions that way. So great. Well, like I said, we may have somebody drop in, a couple more of our board members from the Northwest. We're planning to be there, but we'll address that if they come on board.
Okay. So the first thing we do want to talk about tonight is really what our role and the role of the local clubs around the state.
And first of all, if there's non-members joining us tonight, we would hope that you feel encouraged to join the organization. We always want you to join a local club. That's where so much happens, but also belong individually. And as part of your benefits of joining, you get a print quarterly magazine. This is the fall issue. So we get 4 of those a year. And then as the last 3 years, we also in our spring, we do this fall planning map that's been very, very popular as people kind of plan their rides for the year. So that's part of the membership as that we get. Now, also you get representation from our organization, our regional coordinators. Terry mentioned his, Rob mentioned his, Greg and Jeff, myself, Adam, and Hank. We do a lot of meetings with clubs. We do projects with our local clubs who sometimes ask us to meet with municipalities, with county, state, federal organizations, that kind of thing. So we do a lot of relationship building. We work with our state lawmakers. We work with our state agencies and really become the representatives of the local clubs when asked to do so. So we certainly hope you join watfa.org. If you're not a member, join through your local club as well. We have over 100 chapters in our clubs that are out there, and that's really the core of our organization. And now one of our Northwest guys did come in. Before we get too far away, let's ask Greg to unmute and introduce himself. If you can hear us, Greg.
Good evening, everyone. Greg Olson from the Northwest region. I apologize for being a little late. I was out with my mother and wife celebrating my birthday. They took me out for dinner tonight. So
that's right. It is the birthday boy.
Yep.
We should really sing, but let's not ruin that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Greg he also has Jeff isn't, I don't think he's on here yet, but maybe you want to introduce Jeff in his absence, Greg?
Well, we also have Jeff Jordan that works with me in the Northwest region. We've got a pretty good sizable area with a number of active clubs to take care of. So Jeff and I handle the Northwest region together. Along with being one of the Northwest regional coordinators, I'm also the treasurer for the state association.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And maybe this would be a good time when you talk about clubs and coverage. We had asked the state to provide us with it's a snapshot in time, if you will, for registrations.
Yeah.
But we were lucky enough to get the numbers. And again, with ATVs are different than snowmobiles. We're going to be talking about that a lot tonight. There's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences, but when we talk registrations, there's the public, which when we're out trail riding, that's what we're talking, public registration. There's private public, there's ag, there's municipal. So there's different categories on both the ATV and the UTV side. But by the numbers that we received here from 11/4, so pretty recently, when you combine all of those registrations, and keeping in mind that private is a one-time registration, so we don't know if that machine died and went on its way. But we've now, when you combine all of those, have crested the 407,000. It's almost 408,000 units. Public, we're at 202 for ATVs and almost 65,000 for UTVs. And again, the rest are private, ag, and et cetera. So the 400,000 mark is here. So I thought I would bring that into play as well. And another topic as we start soon, the differences. We get asked this question fairly often. As ATV program, we have 3 different main riding access areas. The original intent of our program was the trail systems. That started back in 1985-86 when the registration program was enacted into law through our state lawmakers. And it was really geared for trail systems. And we got a great trail system and networks in Wisconsin. Original legislation allowed for what we call road routes. Really, the original intent was to hook up maybe get across a roadway, get across a bridge, back to the trail system. As the machinery and the riders evolved and matured, more and more access through routes have become an issue or happening, a trend. And road route expansion now is at an all-time high pace, number of miles, number of communities coming on board. So that's our second part. And then, of course, the third part we're talking about is winter trails. We have seen that grow exponentially. So we're dealing with 3 different types of access in 2 different seasons, summer and winter. But oftentimes we share trails. I think, would I be correct, folks? I think it's about 4,000 miles of shared snowmobile ATV program miles. But we sometimes get asked, why aren't the ATVers paying us trail pass? The snowmobile community has a different mechanism. That got changed a number of years back. So their winter trail pass, because they're doing obviously on the snow side, is winter only, obviously, duh. But they have a different mechanism. So we, as an ATV community, when we do share trails, we do pay to the program, to the snow side of the maintenance dollars, but we don't have to buy a snow trail pass. We do it through our regular 2-year registration, and there's a gas formula. So just so people know that I hear that out there often to debunk that, hey, the ATVers aren't paying for the winter use, and we are. It's just that we don't have to do the trail pass, mainly because of the numbers of ATVs and UTVs that I just cited. So I just want to make that point, get started out, and we'll go into that. So Adam, you put together, hopefully everybody can see on the screen.
Not yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
Upcoming.
Okay,
So the first thing we want to talk about is, where do we ride in Wisconsin in winter? And as we were talking about before, there's this answer, or this question is asked to us quite a bit during winter, and there's really not a good answer because there's different rules for different counties. I'm going to show you guys a map that we have based on data by DNR. Thank you, Jillian, for that, and Kathy, her boss. So in this map here, anything in blue, it doesn't. It says counties receiving winter trail funding. There may be more trails in this, but they don't apply for funding yet. So we're trying to work through that with DNR and the council. But as you can see, all these counties here allow some sort of winter trail use. However, here's the caveat: the rules for each county are different.
or maybe different.
Maybe different. So, I mean, a good example, if we look at Burnett County, they got a pretty strict rule set, I believe, versus some of the other counties where there are no rules for winter trail riding. So some say 28 degrees, why 28? Some say it has to be frozen. Some say it has to be open for snowmobile before ATV can go on.
For a certain amount of time to let the trail setup happen.
Right. So the key point to this is to check before you head out, like probably a couple days before, check the county to see if they're open for winter trail. So now a resource that I put together on the Watford website, I did go ahead and list all these counties, and you can actually go, and there's a link to each one of them down below. Some of them have a page dedicated towards winter trail riding, some of them don't. So if you go to watford.org under trail and riding information, we have winter trail riding. Actually, we'll zip right over to that screen here.
And very, very, very important for you to note. You see those counties in blue. That does not mean, and I will repeat, does not mean every snowmobile trail is open to ATVs. It may be the case, it may not be the case. I'm going to use Washington County down here by us and Fond du Lac. But I mean, don't look at that and say, hey, I can ride every snowmobile trail in Dodge County or Winnebago, or, Washington County. They need to do further research.
Right. So on your screen right now, you should see the Watford website. Again, if you go to trail riding information, at the bottom it says winter riding information. here's a little bit about importance of joining clubs and why we need you, and then where you can ride. And here's the list of all the counties that we have, where you can click on them, and it'll take you to that page. And it'll some of them say if they're open or not. Some give trail conditions, but really what you're looking for, a phone number, somewhere you can contact. Because if you're going to drive 2 or 3 hours to a place and all of a sudden you find out they're not open, that's a long way to go.
Either a phone number or a website, and then when you check the website, make sure it's current, and or I want to use Washington County again. The Kettle Marine Club does a great job on the Eisenbahn. They've got their own Facebook page set up, so it's very quick to react to snow conditions, temperature conditions, open and closed. So it's really up to the individual to do their due diligence to make sure you're not going where you're not supposed to be going. So, and these are trails. Routes are completely different. We have communities that have routes open all year round, and we have communities that close with the trail system that they're hooked up. So more research on that.
And we did have a comment from Facebook from Matt saying, too bad that the UTVs cannot be more included with our registration money goes towards winter trails. And we're going to talk about that, Matt, at the end about how we're proposing to change that.
Yes, yes.
We do have a proposal out there for winter UTV use.
And not to get too far in the woods on that, but when we started, when the UTV program became permanent in 2012 with the help of obviously our state lawmakers, the industry of side-by-sides or UTVs, really, we didn't envision, nor was it intended to be in the winter. But obviously from 2012 to now 2020, the trend has changed dramatically. So that's part of why we're trying to adjust, working with the program to make these adjustments.
And there may be someone in this group right now listening that might have a cab on his UTV with a heater on it, or an air conditioner,
And
or
windows.
both, or windows.
Probably more than one. And we won't say your name, Tim.
Not at all, Tim. No.
We'd like to tease him. He's just smarter than we are.
I guess so. All right. So,
All right.
so now that we got that out of the way, you can go to the website, watfa.org, trail riding information. You can see those counties. Please check with them before you go out. So that's where they're at. Now we're going to talk a little bit about rules and regulations in regard to winter riding. So the first thing is, and we get this question a lot too, again, why can't ATVs go on snowmobile trails?
You know, and this trail system for snowmobiles is primarily on private property. So as our friends and associates, because again, we have a lot of clubs that are dual use, they're snowmobile ATV, and in certain parts of the state, especially down here in the south where we are, it's really almost all private property. So the private landowner, the communication between them, that's an issue that we need to respect so that we don't create undue issues there. Now, private landowners are starting to buy ATVs and UTVs, so that's a change, but it needs to specifically, that's the research that we all still have to do as the winter use continues to evolve and mature. It's up to that. And I'll use Marinette County as an example. In the wintertime, their trail mileage expands from what it is in the summer. It's a year-round system, but there's more miles of winter trail riding that ATVs can ride on in that county than in the summer. Then in the summer, when it goes over some private property, they close those and different things. So there is a lot of, I guess, why we can't ride on snowmobile trails. There's a variety of different reasons, but it's out of respect for the affiliation and relationship our snowmobile partners, and oftentimes it's the same club, has on the snow side.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that later on too in the registration. We're wanting to make a change there.
And the big thing that you should just pay attention to, a lot of the local trail maps will say which trails are open to ATV or snowmobile or both with the rules that are on there. But we also have some signs that are being rolled out across Wisconsin that will have a summer, a winter, or a summer and winter symbol on them. So the summer one is brown with white text. The winter one is white with brown text. And then the joint one actually has a line through the middle where it's half and half.
We're really hoping that we can get our clubs, as they're updating their signage, to continue to add those 3 signs. That's what we want to get out to our riders to look for those.
And if you're a club and you want to find out more information about those signs, they're in the new DNR sign
Yes.
handbook, which was published this year. On the Wattville website, there is a link for trail signs. You can go there and you can see and download the latest trail signing handbook from
Yes.
DNR. So those will be in there.
So the other thing we want to talk about is ice. We ride out on the frozen waterways, which is not a trail, by the way.
But that's actually a good point in that you can ride your ATV or UTV if it's registered on any frozen body of water surface, as long as it's named.
Well, and as long as there's access, public access to that waterway.
Right. So, so that opens up actually a lot of riding opportunity, even in Sheboygan County, where we have 0 miles of trail, we do have routes. But when our marsh freezes over, now we got a lot of area for riding in the marsh.
And be alert, some communities, we're going to use the city I live in, they've got an ordinance against riding snowmobiles or ATVs on the riverfront in the city limits.
Yeah.
So got to be aware of local ordinances, which are local laws.
So, all right.
Any
So while you're
questions coming in?
What's up? Nope, we're good.
Okay.
So while you're on the ice, there's some things you need to pay attention to, especially regarding speeds when you're near people or ice shanties.
Right.
So when you're within 100 feet of an ice shanty or anyone who's fishing, they don't have to be in a shanty or not, crazy people, you need to be at 10 miles an hour or less. So
That's common sense.
yeah.
You don't want to be disturbing folks out there not on ATVs or snowmobiles.
right. So just keep that in mind. 100 feet, 10 miles an hour or less when you're out there. All right, so let's talk about tracked ATVs and UTVs. We do get this question every now and then. It's not a lot. We've talked about it at our regional meeting and our annual meeting. Tracked vehicles are not registered, you're not able to register them. They're not legal on the trails. So it's a long story as to why they're not. We just haven't had a lot of interest for it to change the law. When we change the definition of an ATV, that's pretty hard to do. And there's a lot of vetting that has to go on with everyone involved with the program, land managers, law enforcement, and the manufacturers as well. So,
And Greg and Terry and Rob, well, and Hank too, we brought this topic up in a questionnaire at all 3 of our regional meetings this year. Or was it last year as well? Because we were trying to gauge interest,
yeah,
because there are certain pockets of the state where people are asking that question. Personally, we've tested track machines, don't really have an issue with their impact. In fact, there's less footprint.
Yeah.
The problem has to do with width. Usually when you put the track kits on, they get too wide, and that's where the big issue is.
right.
So that's a concern. And the other part is some of those manufacturers we don't make those machines, we don't sell those machines. They kind of says, we want you to do this for us. And that, I mean,
And traditionally, the way it works is usually a manufacturer will have someone that will work with us, but they do most, work
yeah.
with our guidance. And there are manufacturers who may release machines that don't fit Wisconsin registration standards, and unfortunately, they didn't work with us, and then they have to work reactive instead of proactive. So,
Before we kind of, because it looks like we're gonna go to winter ordinances, but
Yep.
should I ask any of our panelists if they have anything to add at this point on any of that topic?
yeah, if panelists, if you have anything you want to add, you feel free to jump in.
Just unmute yourself.
And they are expensive to purchase. That is another thing. So not everyone is going to have the track vehicle. That's a very niche line there, a niche product. So no one unmuted, so we're good. We're going to move on. Winter riding ordinances.
Yeah, Adam kind of talked on it before. A lot of these, Marinette County has no temperature restrictions, none at all. Other counties you get into, there's that magical 28-degree rule and so much snow cover. And I say magical, I don't mean to dishonor that, but we've really researched who came up with 28 degrees. Why is that the magic formula?
If you
Seems,
don't.
seems to work, but maybe with our bigger machines now, maybe 28 should be 20 or some other thing. But anyway, 28 is one of the local ordinances that we see a lot. In fact, one of the counties we were checking, I think it was Oneida today, when it had 4 feet above the snow
In the shade.
in the shade of the 28s. So, I mean, so,
They had a very specific way to measure the degree.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
which is very good. That's actually a good way to point that, because 28 in sun versus 28 in cloudy is going to give you different trail conditions.
And we've had discussions with some of our clubs, 28 degrees in November when it's supposed to be fall. The sun angle is way different than 28 degrees in the middle of January where the
Right.
difference is. So those are things that we think about as an organization and through our clubs that, you know, that 28 degrees is not a magic number by any means. So something to think about. So those are some of the stuff that things you want to look at. And again, with road routes now in the winter, you want to check the ordinances on those. As we stated earlier, some road routes are open year round. Some that connect up to trails close when the trails close. So those are things, and some trails like Jackson County, they close at a certain time of year in November. Well, I think at the end of October, middle of October. Then they open again in the middle of December if the snow cover is right. And then they, you know, they go by conditions.
Right.
And then the trails that hook up, Jackson hooks up with Clark. There's, we got to be careful. At this point in time, Clark County does not allow UTVs, only ATVs. And last year, during that crazy time in February, remember all the snow globe happened and it just kept dumping. Then Jackson County had issues and they closed it for UTVs. I don't even know this year if they've gone back to a different, but key is local ordinances, local riding areas. It's really on the rider,
Right.
to do some research on that. Hopefully we'll be able to gather that up, but it's changing so much.
Right.
It's a really a moving piece right now.
And last year, really what we saw with all that snow, I mean, our groomers were getting stuck.
Yeah.
So it was just so much fresh snow that you couldn't get through. And it was dangerous is what they're bringing it down to.
And common sense too is let the groomers get out, let it get packed, let it get ready. Some of that is
Right.
sharing that
Yep.
you got to do and reasonable.
Use some common sense.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Any of our other panelists got anything else to add there?
Nope. Okay. Let's move on to snow plowing.
Oh,
That is something that we see being utilized quite a bit since we passed that law, allowing
well,
you
lawmakers pass it.
lawmakers pass it.
But we ask them to.
We introduce it.
We
Ask them to introduce it. All right. You can, for those who aren't aware, you can use an ATV or UTV for snow plowing on a road that is not a road route, but there are rules with that.
Yep.
You have to have a 360-degree amber light. You can only go
What has to be seen from 300.
see it right 300 seen, so you can have 8 lights or whatever for. You
It
can-
starts October 1st.
Yeah.
And it goes until April 30th.
Yeah.
So if your city or town has no routes, unless they have enacted an ordinance to prohibit snow plowing, this law lets you use your ATV or UTV for plowing. But the restrictions to continue on, you can't be on a roadway, I believe that's 45 miles an hour or faster.
Yep.
You can't exceed 15 miles an hour on roadways yourself with the snowplow on. And once you jump on the sidewalk to start doing plowing, you can't go faster than 5. If you plowed, you would know why that would be. Operate on the far right side. Must be 16 or older. It's still mandatory if you're over 16 to have this, and born after 1/1 of 1988. Still got to have your DNR safety certificate. Here's one that you can't travel more than 2 miles from your starting point. I don't know, we're not speaking for law enforcement. We're not quite sure if that's measured as a crow flies or not, but it was put in as some sort of a measurement that you don't start plowing in Sheboygan and go to Bayfield with your snow plow. That was kind of the reason, I think, rationale that's there. So those are the main points. I say early on, we had issues where people were plowing turning around in the roadway and in certain cases getting citations. And that's why we're really glad that lawmakers work with us to make this work. And I really don't know, I don't know if anybody else, but we really haven't had issues that I'm made aware of. Doesn't mean we know everything, obviously, but I think it's been working out well. Let's see, I'm just checking the
So
questions.
we had a good question on Facebook.
Okay.
While mulch plowing different customers, is the distance of 2 miles also the distance from where the legal road routes end?
Now, it doesn't have anything to do with the road routes. It's the way it says is
I
where
think-
your starting point was.
Yeah, I think what he's getting at is, so he starts and he's using a road route.
Oh, does
The
that
road
take
route
away from?
ends,
You know,
yeah,
that's one of those subjective things.
The snowplow law came in before the
It did,
explosion of
well
road
before.
routes.
You know,
That's a good question.
some of this stuff, unless it's tested, and you never want to be the test person, but that's, unless somebody cited you, I don't think we would know the answer to that. In my common sense would say, well, now the road route, you can ride with a plow or not, so.
And there is a conversation going on Facebook as well that we'll address at the end of the webinar about the width and enforcement of width.
Right.
We have some issues that we can go with that.
That's a
So-
good question, though.
Yeah. The last few things about snow plowing is their headlights have to be visible from at least 200 feet away. Taillights must be visible from 500 feet away. Obviously, that's for safety purposes. Your plows can't cover your lights up.
Right.
So just be aware of that. If you're under 18, you still have to have a helmet on. And then your machines must be registered.
Right.
So they do have to be registered.
And the same sound requirement, whether it's on the
Yeah.
ice or snow plowing, they need to be under the sound limit. And you have a spark arrestor,
Right.
even in the winter.
Yep, gotta have it out there. All right, we're gonna move on a little bit beyond that now. So let's talk about preparing your machine for winter. There are some things you might want to take in consideration mechanically when we're gonna be out riding.
Windshields are, on the ATV side, once you clip a windshield on there, it really cuts down on what we're going to be talking about is wind chill.
Yep.
Sometimes it goes across the hands as well, and you can put other guards over your handlebars to keep the wind off you. On the ATV side, again, we're talking, you can put handlebar heaters on there, which work really well. You can put thumb heaters on your thumb control. They've got heated seats now. In fact, like snowmobiles have, you can get accessory seats for that as well. So
Yep.
ATV side is one thing. UTVs, now it's a whole different animal with windshields and windows and cabs and heaters. There's all those things that you can equip yourself with.
Right. It's a good time too to just do a once over in your machine, make sure you don't have mud and debris up by the radiators.
Right.
You know, you want your machine running pretty well for winter. What about putting studs in your tires?
Well, when you get on frozen waterways, unless there's a local ordinance, it certainly does increase your traction immensely. You just have to be careful that once you jump on, most of the trail systems don't want that on there because it does grip excessively, but you'd want to check your ordinance on there. I know personally, years ago, this marsh that Adam was talking about, we studded up some of our ATVs and we had some off-road motorcycles too, and just to try out the stud stuff, and it really is a huge.
Made a huge
Huge
difference.
difference.
It was a lot of work, but it made a big difference.
But again, once you jump off of there and go onto a trail, now you got a whole different critter, right? So
All right. So then we're talking about, what do you wear while you're riding in winter and cold weather? Obviously, the same dress and layers definitely applies because you may start off at 7 in the morning and it's 10 below, and in Wisconsin you get to noon and it's up to 25 degrees already.
right.
So you may want to dress in layers. It just helps with that, keeping your body the right temperature.
And I would caution the UTVs with the cabs and the heaters.
Yeah.
Sometimes you dress for the ride, but you really need to dress for the breakdown.
Right.
So if you're out in the middle of nowhere at 20 miles away and it's now 10 below and you're going to have to hoof it somewhere.
Right. Yeah, the same logic goes for when you're traveling in your car.
Right.
or your vehicle, technically you're supposed to have a blanket and something to keep you warm in case you go off the road. In a trail condition or a trail situation, that's even going to be worse because the odds of being seen on a road are pretty high.
Right.
If you're on the trail, like you said, 20 miles away, it may be some time before somebody comes and notices you.
And there's some mortality deaths that we saw where people did machine breakdown, whatever and they froze. So this time of year, I guess that is something that we reacquaint ourselves with pretty quickly.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to move over to.
Did Greg have something to add to that, Greg? I see you muted or. Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
All right. So I put together a little chart here about wind, no wind, the science of the wind chill. And so again, wind chill comes into play a lot more when you're riding, especially an ATV, where you have the wind being forced upon you. Your clothing, and when it's not windy, your jackets and stuff is creating that insulation. When you start introducing the wind to it, that warm air is being forced out because the wind is, or the air is moving through your clothing, and your clothing is going to breathe. So just keep that in mind that as you're going, that hypothermia is going to set in sooner if you're going faster or it's windy. Speaking of wind, let me get to that side. Do this in a little backwards order. There is a wind chill chart, and I'm not going to get into the science of this too much, but as the temperature goes down and the wind goes up, the temperature that we feel changes from what the actual temperature is. There's a whole science in this. It's pretty fascinating, but if it's if we're going at 20 miles an hour or I'm sorry, if it's 10 degrees out and you're even doing 20 miles an hour, you're actually at -9 degrees wind chill. So that impacts of how long you can sustain that temperature while you're riding.
And a person would think, hey, this is Wisconsin, people grew up with this and they know it, but a lot of folks just coming into the sport, especially on the UTV side, whether they got wind chills or not, that's why we just want to keep reacquainting them with the big picture of rules and ideas and common sense. So
Mark Geffers actually had
Mark.
a good comment. Make sure you make a plan and let somebody know when you're going riding and when you're going to return, or a time frame for that. That is fantastic advice, especially in winter. Even if you're going out ice fishing, that's a good thing too. You may fall through the ice and no one will see you.
And that brings up a point. It seems to happen now. We stand firm on the importance of seatbelts, but if your UTV drops through the ice, just like in a car, you want to be able to do a quick release or even have one of those safety features where you can cut the seatbelt if you have to, same as you would be in a car if you're out on the ice. So
Bobby Shield recommends Refrigerator. Yeah, that's good stuff. So yeah,
nobody has a good time outside when you're cold and your outer extremities are cold. So it really changes the experience that you have.
And speaking of being cold, I'm going to throw this slide up here just as something to think about. Your warning signs of hypothermia. As a firefighter and someone who gets to deal with this quite a bit, even while we're firefighting in -20 degrees, I've done that. That's not fun. You want to just be conscious of the signs of hypothermia. So confusion, not knowing where you are, where you're going, what's going on around you, that definitely happens. Uncontrollable shivering, difficulty speaking, sleepiness, and stiff muscles are all signs of hypothermia or being intoxicated.
I know some people are just confused all the time. Oh, no, that's another story. I'm kidding. Could be me. Who knows?
Who buy GM vehicles?
Yeah.
Just kidding. So those are the signs you want to be looking out for when you're dealing with hypothermia. When you start getting into the extreme bits of hypothermia, your tendency is actually to take your clothes off. You lose the feeling, and people start taking their clothes off, and then that just makes that whole process go a lot quicker. So be aware of that.
All right. So the other thing I think you were going to put up was the next slide.
Yeah. So here's a question. Here's a question for you guys. How much ice is safe ice for ATVs?
When is ice safe?
When is ice safe? Let's see if you guys can chime in there for the answer. I had a good chart for this where they used Star Wars figures, everything from like, I don't know, I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but it was kind of funny. But we'll just cut into the answer for that. And somebody says as they get older, confusion is a daily thing. So the answer to the safe ice is there actually is no safe ice. Just remember that. But the charts are pretty consistent with if it's 2 inches or less, just stay off. 4 inches for ice fishing and ice skating, 5 to 6 for snowmobiles and ATVs. Now, the weight of your ATV and then the weight of the UTV, especially you put 4 people in a UTV, all your fishing gear, that adds up. So keep that in mind. You may want to stay away from 5 or 6, and now you're thinking more like 8 to 12 because now you're the weight of a car almost, a smaller car. So yeah, 8 to 12 for small cars or cars and small trucks, and then 12 to 15 for medium trucks. So every year it seems to happen. I'd say Lake Winnebago claims more vehicles every year than I can remember.
Keep in mind, you might go in where it's 8 to 12 inches in one spot, and then you got a feeder spring or something coming in, and it's not the same thickness. So
right, yeah, the ice can definitely change in thickness, and they do say you're supposed to check it every so many feet. I think it's 150 feet or 100 feet. You're supposed to check the depth. Right. So just keep that in mind. Those do change.
And then when we're on the ice, you know, stopping distances, being able to turn, the way it handles, and talking about Lake Winnebago, but it happens on everywhere, but the ice shoves and the cracks in the ice as you go through, those are all things you got to think about. And of course, for people who are ice fishing, there's the holes that you might go through.
Yeah, and Steve Mayo brought up a good point. He says he can, he waits until he can talk with local fishing clubs.
Perfect answer.
Absolutely. Those guys are out there drilling holes for fishing, so they'll know.
Yeah, a lot of those bait shops.
Yep.
They know what's going on out there, so that's a great place to. That's a good comment.
There's a couple websites for ice fishing that they'll list in their fishing reports. Lake Link, I believe, is one of them. So check that out too.
And if you're riding at night, especially on ice, but on snow, but ice, like you say, you got one of these ice shoves, and it really is deceiving. It's hard for your eyes to pick up the conditions out there. So be wary of that. So
Bobby Shield had a good point. I love when people park on ice right next to one another as close as possible. Yeah, spread out your weight distribution there. Yeah, because when one goes, then they all go with it. So,
and you know that brings a part about wearing. They've got the clothing that you can get that actually acts as a flotation device.
Right.
I know I was working with our warden force, and they were showing me the different ways that they have, because if you go in, you need something to keep you up, and you're still not out of trouble.
Right. Yeah, you gotta. If you fall into the ice and you're half submerged, trying to crawl out of the ice is extremely hard, especially with how fast hypothermia is going to set in. It really,
and having those picks where you can get on the ice is there. But another reason to don't ride alone.
Yep.
Like Mark said, plan your ride at the very least so somebody knows when, but it's better not to ride alone, especially in the wintertime, but anytime.
So with all that said, don't let us scare you to think riding on ice is not for you. Just use some common sense, do some planning, be prepared. That's the big thing. Always be prepared when you're riding on ice. So,
okay. Anybody of our panelists want to add anything? We're going to go to the next section, it looks like, but. All right. And thanks for the good questions that are coming in.
Yeah, great comments coming in. There's some other things we're going to talk about. Again, I'll circle back. Stretch wanted you to stop moving so he could draw a mustache on you. All right, let's talk about funding and trail maintenance. Taking care of a winter trail is definitely a challenge in the state with grooming and the weather conditions that are always changing. So we wanted to take some time and just explain how that works and the funding mechanism that goes behind it, because grooming a trail in winter financially can be a struggle sometimes. So really when it comes down to it, when we talk about trails in Wisconsin in winter, on the ATV side, a lot of it's public trail, public land, usually county property or some state or federal. And those land managers, their job is to make sure the trail is maintained, groomed or whatever. So with that, they're gonna obviously need some money for grooming. The same applies in summer as well.
And sometimes it's a ATV snowmobile club.
Yep.
That work together. So the snowmobile clubs are needing the same dollars.
But I think the best way to talk about this is to ask Jillian to give us an overview of how the funding mechanism works and how it's awarded and everything involved with that.
And even the timeline, the deadline dates and that kind of stuff. So Jillian, would you feel comfortable to give us kind of the group listening, a snapshot of that?
Sure. So right now, the ATV grant program offers $100 a mile for maintenance of winter ATV trails. And it's up to the, trail manager how that money is spent, but it could be brushing and just basic trail footprint clearing, or it could be grooming. And I think the intention of that $100 a mile was to sort of make up for any wear and tear on the groomed trail surface by ATVs. But that money specifically is for ATVs and not UTVs. It's pretty short and sweet. Any new winter ATV trails could come in for new funding on our grant application, which is due April 15th, but that would have to come through a local unit of government, more commonly a county. So the county manages the entire countywide trail network. They could apply for funding by April 15th. We present those applications to our ORV council for review and recommendation, and we go from there.
And currently, Jillian or Rob or Adam, but currently if a trail is open in the summer and it's the same trail in the winter, then am I correct that the UTV mileage would apply in the winter, but it has to be open, it currently has to be open in the summer. Is that how you guys understand it?
I haven't encountered that myself. I know there are a couple of counties that I haven't dug into too far that do allow UTVs in just the winter, and we've done some interpretation of the law to make that funding work. But I know in my old job as a grant program manager and grant project manager up here in the Oneida County area, a lot of my counties didn't allow UTVs on the trails in winter because they didn't have to based on the way the law was written.
Okay. And Rob, do you want to add anything to Jillian as the chair?
Well, just that we're trying to correct some of that issue. And, originally when the UTV program was started, we really didn't see that we were going to end up with a lot of winter usage. We really didn't know what was going on. And you had kind of mentioned that earlier on. So we've got a section coming up where we're going to try to work on some of those deficiencies, because we want to make sure we get funding to our sponsors out there so they take care of the trails and keep them in good shape. So, and provide the best opportunities for the users.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more. Yep. I didn't want to say anything about our friend Rob, but his glasses were reflecting his screen. He kind of looked like a Star Wars guy with laser eyes. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Jillian, for that great, succinct explanation.
Yeah. And then just so anyone on the webinar on Facebook, if you have any questions about funding, let us know while we have Jillian, and we can direct those towards her.
Right.
Do anything. We did get one question that we're kind of take one step back. Somebody says, or Dwayne says, why do you not have a better system in place to let riders know what is open? Travel Wisconsin has a great system in place for snowmobiling. Most of your current county administrators already know the system on snowmobiling side. This is a big issue in spring, summer, and fall. What is currently open without having to go to every county website?
And the inconsistency is the problem.
Yes.
Where a county will have, like, say, the 28-degree rule, or they'll have no rule, or they're waiting for snow conditions. So the winter condition report, we've entered into discussions with Travel Wisconsin. The problem is, not the problem, the challenge is waiting for this evolution to keep identifying itself so that we can get consistency. Kind of like with the road routes now, we're trying to get consistency, and the same with on the snow side. We've all recognized that that's a challenge area, and that's why we're devoting like these workshops and others and working with this legislation package to better address winter use as the popularity of it continues to grow. So
Right. And I think, and Steve Mayo asked, why isn't there a consistent rule through the whole state? Why is it county by county? And I think some of the reason in that is as the trail systems evolved, not every county was allowing ATV traffic at that time, and they just created their own rules as they saw fit. And it kind of grew like that.
and the rules in the northern counties where the weather's much different than another part, that's just one of the challenges with winter.
Right.
Winter's not consistent.
No,
So
especially around the state.
dirt's easy,
Um,
snow's hard.
So yeah, so that's the answer to that. And we have been over the last few years working with the Department of Tourism on their snow report page, as far as applying that to the ATV side. So there are discussions ongoing about that. There's obviously costs involved with that, and
And getting the reports from the different people to be as consistent. So we're gaining on it. Our focus is on it. We don't have an answer yet, but we know that that's a weak point that we're trying to improve and change.
Yep, absolutely.
And our Department of Tourism has been great, and we look forward to some of the new things that we can do, with help for that.
Yeah. So all right. So back to funding. We have one funding question
Okay.
from Jason. Is grooming money for a snowmobile separate from ATV and UTV? And they are separate, segregated accounts. So when you register an ATV or UTV, that goes into a segregated account. Same with snowmobile, and then the trail pass. Somehow that works.
Yeah.
But on the ATV, UTV side, yeah, it goes into a separate account. And every year we have a funding meeting where we have the award. We award the grants and the maintenance.
So there's a funding meeting on the snow side where it's called the Snow Council, and then there's a funding meeting called the ORV Council. Jillian or Rob, do you want to expand on that so it's clear, or do you think that's? His question was, is it separate dollars that the ATV program pays from the snowmobile program? And that's
Yes, the ATV registration money goes into a pot that is managed just for ATV trails. So those can be summer trails, year-round trails, or winter trails, and any project seeking grant funding from the ATV program goes to the ORV Council and is considered on its ATV merits. And then basically there's a duplication of that same thing over on the snowmobile side. They have their own registration money, their own projects, their own council to make recommendations. But it's not uncommon that a project could be cooperatively useful to both. And so, for example, if there's a bridge that both the snowmobilers and the ATVers need, we might try to split the cost of that bridge rehab between the two programs and see if both programs would chip in funds to help repair the bridge.
okay. Yeah, that's great.
And I as someone on the ORV Council, seeing these joint projects come in, it's rewarding in that, we have a shared trail system and both of our programs can contribute to some of these projects. Bridges are not cheap, especially when you engineer them as we are now. They are not cheap. So it's, they have to have joint effort into doing that.
And keep it in mind, the ATV and the snowmobile may not be that heavy, but the groomers that are grooming them going across them are. Now, somebody asked there.
Yeah, so Terry was asking who actually can apply for funding.
And that is a little different from the snowmobile and ATV program. So Rob or Jillian, you want to form in there?
I was waiting to see if Rob wants to jump in, but I guess not. The snowmobile grant program, only county governments are eligible applicants. In the ATV program, it can be counties, cities, towns, villages, any local unit of government. But because trails are managed often on a county level, it's usually the counties who apply for grant funds for ATV funds as well, but it could be a smaller unit of government.
Okay, good question, good answer. There are smaller projects. I know that cities are involved. That's probably not on an all trail system, but it's on a project.
Yeah.
So good question.
And a follow-up to that question from Jason is, his point is, if some of the snowmobile only counties knew there was money for grooming and trail maintenance for ATVs, maybe they'd open up to more shared trail opportunities, which a lot of the land managers are aware. There's a lot of dynamics, personal dynamics when we talk about snowmobile clubs, ATV, and doing the shared trail thing. So
And I would add that our counterparts, the AWSC, Association of Wisconsin Snowmobile Clubs, and their clubs, I feel like we've got a really good relationship, working relationship with our partners. And I say, oftentimes we're the same club, just depending on the season and the same people. But the issue is the issue, not the machines. And sometimes the issue requires, different decisions. So,
And there's a lot of snowmobile trails where they may cross areas that, if it's questionable and someone goes through an ATV, there's no bridge there. They expect the waterway to be frozen. It's just not a good idea to mix the ATV into that environment.
but I would, to the questioner, there's still some bias out there, some old thinking of it's, not this machine or not that machine. And I think rightly so, that's needs to go away on education and communication. And I think that's happening by and large. And when we get to the end, we're going to show you this chart. You almost got to have a degree in algebra, but not really. But I think it'll show you why we're trying to answer that question in a better way with some money. And that's where our state lawmakers are helping us here as we try to address this winter issue.
Now we talk about how the clubs are actually being put in charge or being given the task of doing the grooming and how they're doing it. A great example that I like to bring up is the Dungood Riders in Dungood, Wisconsin, Marinette County, where they have, if you ever see their clubhouse, it's right on Highway 8. And they have their tractors out there and they have their snow equipment, they have their dirt equipment, and it's a joint club, snowmobile and ATV. And it's just that they work so well together, and they have their volunteers. They go out and they groom. Some get paid, some they get
Mostly
a reimbursement,
right.
but they put that back to the club.
Right.
Is where that all goes. And they go out there and they drag, and they're dragging at night. And so by all props to those guys. To anyone who's done grooming operations in our state, thank you. For what you do, because without you, our trails wouldn't be where they are, especially in winter when it's cold, and dark,
and I would add there's other clubs that we consider dual clubs. I mean, they address both ATV and UTV and snowmobile, and some of them, because of conditions and land easements, they don't allow ATV and UTV in the winter. And again, that's an issue that they have to address in their area. So. Right. Doesn't mean just because you're a dual club that you have winter use, but you work together, to make it work. So it's a case by case basis.
All right. So, all right, let's move forward now. And a trend that has come up and questioned, and we've seen it on social media, is the impact that UTVs have on winter trails. So there are concerns about that, and we are working to address that with the land managers. Well, in one sense, the UTVs allow riders to be more comfortable with windshields, and you fancy people with your heated cabs. But they can also allow you to carry more gear. So especially if you're going ice fishing, you can put a lot more in the UTV. But at the same time, they're heavier, and they're putting more pressure down on the winter or the snow frozen trails. So that is something that we're always ongoing, always talking, always working with land managers and getting their input is to see how that's evolving and what we can do about it.
Yeah, and then the other clubs and the other users, and there's a lot of formula that you come up with the right answers. Then you get some places where the trail is an abandoned railway that's a trail where the trail surface, it had a locomotive train on it, for God's sake, so you have a much different impact than on a sandy trail.
Right.
So trail surface underneath also has a bearing on it.
And two, what education and conservation goes a long way. If you're on a UTV and the trail isn't in pristine condition, use your common sense. Don't rut it up. Don't wreck it for the rest of us. It definitely has an impact for everyone, and we'll get trails shut down.
And that's the beauty of our clubs, our trail ambassadors interacting. And some people, they buy a $20,000, $30,000 UTV and they want to be using it all the time. And maybe they're new into this whole outdoor motorized recreational experience. So that's the challenge and why Terry mentioned Trail Town. We're trying to not only expand where people hear the right information, and that's through some of the businesses that interact with them, whether it's a dealership or repair shop or a hotel or a bait shop, somewhere where they welcome them to get the right information out. So,
Yeah, a question come up, just, they missed the part talking
Oh.
about where to ride, so.
okay.
All right, so yeah, that's, I guess all we have to say about that.
Yeah. So,
It's,
and we're in. So let's kind of go into some of how we get input from our clubs. We have an annual meeting as an organization. Hopefully people on here know we meet annually in the kind of the central part of the state. And then I'd mentioned regional meetings. So Terry gets one going, Greg gets one going, Rob gets one going, and we pull the local clubs together. We identify trends. We ask what their trends are, what their issues are. We do surveys. We try and gather all that from different places and then sit down together and identify these trends that we're seeing develop. Then we also talk with our land managers, our county government, our law enforcement folks, our safety instructors, our trail ambassadors that are out there talking and walking and experiencing this. And then, you know, Hank's role is special projects. That's a lot of meshing all that stuff together and trying to come up with a strategy. And this is the bill that our lawmakers have just introduced on our behalf and for us to try and fix some of these trends that we're seeing. And one of them is dollars and cents. There's other issues. This is a 13-page bill, so it's a fairly significant going over many years in history of things we're just trying to correct, that we've noticed that you know, the program evolves, we mature, we need to make corrections on them. But the funding, especially in the winter on the UTV, ATV side, is one of the main focuses. So let's kind of pop that chart up there. And this is the one you need a degree in algebra if you haven't seen it before. We've studied it quite a bit now.
I got a laser pointer.
Yeah, okay, so Adam, you want to now take a look, start with the upper heading there, the signs that you were talking
Oh,
about.
yeah,
So,
yeah. All right, I'm just make sure everyone can see that. So the three signs that we talked about earlier about identifying if a trail is open during summer, winter, or both, these are what they're going to look like. So the summer has that brown background with white text and a white ATV. The winter is reversed, so it has white background with brown.
so that means winter only trails.
Yep, that's a winter only. If it's a shared trail, shared summer, winter, then we're gonna get this.
The combo.
So, making sure Facebook might not see what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, there's a delay on the
There we go.
Facebook Live,
Okay,
so
there we
we
go.
just want to make sure they see it.
So those are the three signs that we talked about, the summer, winter, or the joint, I should say, or shared. So with that, there are different funding rules or funding mechanisms for each of these. And that's what this spreadsheet is. So we have in white what's current, and then in green what we're proposing in this bill. So in an example here, not example, but so for the summer program, currently it's $600 a mile for ATV. If they allow UTVs, they get an additional $100 per mile, for a total of $700 per mile
Maximum.
maximum that they can apply for maintenance. What we're proposing to do with our bill is ATV is going to stay the same at $600. We're going to increase UTV to $200, so they can be apply a maximum of $800 per mile.
Before we go any further, this is one of the points where I want to go. We're not asking for a fee increase of a registration at all. Working with the ORV Council and the folks that do the accounting, our fund, because we're growing in numbers, especially on the UTV side, we do not have to ask for an increase in registration. So I had one person automatically go, great, you guys are going to increase our registration fee. This would be coming out of the existing pot of money, so to speak, that the program generates.
Yeah, my laser pointer is causing issues.
Okay.
So that's summer. Now we're gonna ignore the bottom part because that's for non-shared. We'll talk about winter time, winter trails that are shared with snowmobiles. So it's ATV, UTV, or snowmobile. Currently, you get $100 max per mile for ATV. If your trail allows UTVs in winter, there are no funds available for maintenance, which is why we see some counties not opening for UTV, because there's no incentive to do that. So a maximum of $100 per mile ATV, and again, no UTV. They can apply also for $300 per mile, and there are some other funding mechanisms and supplements and whatever for that. We won't get into that. So they have a potential of applying for $400 per mile if it's ATV and snowmobile, and again, UTV has no impact to that. What we're proposing is, again, ATV staying the same at 100. UTV, we're going to add 100 per mile. So a combined effort of ATV, UTV of $200. Again, for winter, they can add snowmobile. They will add snowmobile for 300 plus whatever thing they can do. So for a potential of $500. So then we're looking at combined year round. Really what you're doing is you're adding summer and winter together, just so you can see if you have a year round trail system, even if they have closures in spring and fall, as long as it's open for 3 months, in winter, they can apply for that. So you're looking at right now, $1,100 per mile. We're looking to increase that to $1,300 per mile for the shared program.
So again, this one's a little hard to read, or different to read, because as Adam stated, it's combining the summer with the winter. Yeah, that's where you come up with those arrows pointing down. So if you added them all together for all seasons, that's what that total is, and including the snowmobile.
And one of the questions we have is, well, why is ATV 600 and UTV only 100?
When we first started in 2012, when the UTV registration program didn't have any registrations, we knew that we had to be careful because we didn't know how it was going to grow. And that's why we're watching that chart that I talked about at the beginning, number of ATVs. And we watched that very carefully. And that's why we're saying the ATV it's growing slowly. It's not decreasing. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does, but it's kind of flat. But the UTV side is growing now. So that's why we're asking lawmakers to adjust out of the UTV pot of money. That's why. We started with 0 in 2012, and now we're where we're at.
So let's talk about non-shared ATV and UTV trails. They are out there.
Well, this came to us from actually one of our clubs in the South, and other clubs thought it was a good idea. But again, when I say the South, where there's less snow cover, and of course that kind of blows that whole theory now that we got more snow in Sheboygan County than they do in Rhinelander. But there's the resistance for folks to allow winter only, what we're calling it frozen ground trail, where there may not be good snow cover, but it's cold like it is right now, and approaching a landowner without treading on the past history they have with the snowmobile trail. And because routes have expanded so extensively, it would probably be a different trail is the theory, that we want to extend that mileage. So we need a non-snowmobile combined trail. We're trying to replace it. We're adding one category with this proposal that we think combination with routes that we can open up some more winter only trails. So that's when we say non-shared, that just means that we don't want to battle uphill on something. So this is what that definition is.
So for wintertime, a non-shared, so ATV, UTV only. Currently, you get $100 per mile for ATV. Again, no UTV funding. So you're just looking at $100 per mile. We're proposing that we increase ATV to 200. We're going to add 100 for UTV. So now you're looking at $300 per mile.
For a winter only.
For a winter only ATV, UTV trail.
Non-shared with the snow.
Non-shared. And again, if for a land manager, if you add the snowmobiles, you're getting more money per mile for maintenance. So it's always better to work together in that. but again, as you said, there are cases where it just won't work. There's a lot of, parts involved that just make it just won't work.
Prohibitive, yeah.
Prohibitive to do it. So then total year round for a non-shared ATV, UTV trail, you're looking at $800 per mile right now. And again, that's with 0 UTV. And then, I'm sorry,
$100.
$100 UTV because that's from summer. And then you're looking at for joint, our proposal is $1,100. So, and again, we're not raising the registration fees. We're not adding trail pass. That's going to stay the same.
And the reason we can do that is because of our funding mechanism. Number of units sold continues to just amaze all of us.
Yep.
And we have a state gas tax formula. It's different than snowmobiles as well. But those two things were self-supporting. This is not general dollars. These are our ATV, UTV dollars being used for what we hope to be an expansion. Listening to our clubs, listening to our people, what has been some of the roadblocks. This new non-shared, winter only frozen trail may or may not work, but it doesn't have a chance to work now.
Right. And over this whole past year, we have regional meetings and our annual meeting. We had a survey that we handed out to our clubs that asked them their opinions on maintenance and funding. So obviously everyone's going to say they need more funding, but they had to show us why.
Right.
So and then we take that into consideration for the ORB Council, and then that's what we're doing with this bill too. So,
Rob or Hank or Terry, any of you guys want to add in there? Jillian, did we capture that correctly? Or Hank? Okay, getting the signal. Okay.
Hank gave us a thumbs up. So
Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Nope. So that's one portion of our bill
Right.
that we're proposing. We're just going to quick touch on some other things that this bill is going to address and clean up.
Right. Update, clean up, change based on trends that doing all this work to gather the information and assemble it.
So one of the things that we've had involving tires is the definition of a low pressure tire with, again, the expansion of road routes. Some even manufacturers are coming out with tires that aren't low pressure anymore.
Right. And some of the machines, when you put a pressure rating on them, coming stock from the factory are 4 or 5 passenger machine.
Right.
We had a meeting and we invited some manufacturer and tire engineers to educate us on tires. It was quite an education. And that's where we all kind of look and says, this is crazy. We don't need a low pressure tire anymore. In fact, it makes it more dangerous on these road routes to have a low pressure tire. And people know if they're going to go on a road and then on a trail, they're going to change the tires on their own because it's not going to work well.
Right.
Yeah. So our proposal is just make it simple, take the low pressure out of it and just say tire. Simple, easy, done. And the industry has taken care of that with radial tires and all the different parts of it. Yeah. So that's part of it.
The next part of the bill that we're going to clarify, and this has been an issue that we needed to address, and some of the comments from Facebook were actually asking about this, is how to measure the width of an ATV or UTV. Believe it or not, that's not an easy answer, especially right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to clarify that.
Yes, and when we originally asked lawmakers to introduce the bill, the UTV side-by-side industry did not have a manufacturer's organization. They did have no standards. So we said, working with our many land managers and clubs to come up with this 65 inches, that is our state maximum. That's what, through a lot of hand-wringing and negotiations, that was the absolute widest that we felt in negotiations that, as a group of people, that we could tolerate through that. So we assumed, because there was no way from the manufacturer, that it was outside a tire to outside a tire. Well, now, fast forward to 2019 and 20, the industry put together a trade organization that came up with engineering standards and criteria. So now there is an industry method on where to measure the width, and it's actually outside of rim to outside of rim versus tire, mirrors, cabs that extend. So in this bill, we're taking what the industry is using so that it can be clearly identified where to measure the width.
And this also helps with us when we're talking about enforcement, because we now have a guide that our law enforcement officers can follow. And it's not, well, this officer did it this way, this officer did it that way.
Right.
Now we're going to be following the standard.
So our consumer will be treated more fairly, the law enforcement will be easier for them, or at least consistent.
Right.
So that's two key points. One of the ones, and another one, go ahead.
So we had a question about that. We had a couple come in here. But one about is, do we want to consider widening trails because more UTV usage?
And that's, that's a land-based question that our clubs working with the land base are. I'm convinced we still haven't widened out to the 65-inch width in all places yet to accommodate the trail side. So when you've got concrete gates put in at 65, you've got trail equipment geared to the 65, you've got, so it's a major undertaking. I'm not saying no, but there's a lot of people and a lot of agencies and a lot of touch points that would have to concur with that. It's not an easy, let's just make it 70.
No.
It's a whole lot of things that are impacted by that. One thing changes and it changes many others.
Right.
Good question.
That was a good question. Yep. We're going to pause this for a second. They have a question. I don't want to leave this. I might forget about it. Last winter, Jackson County, after collecting money for ATV, UTV trail maintenance, closed the trails to ATV, UTVs halfway through the season. What measures are in place to keep them from doing this again? And it's a land manager's choice.
Well, and the safe point on that
Right.
is the agency that Jillian works for, the citizen group that you're on and Rob's on and doing review, snow conditions there. They weren't collecting UTV dollars.
No.
I think they just stopped the UTVs, but they may have closed the trail, just like in the summertime when you had all this rain,
Right.
all kinds of trail closures.
Yep.
You can't control Mother Nature.
No. And really, when they close these trails, their intent is to prevent them from being damaged further. And the safety aspects of it too. There's a whole reason why you would close it or keep them closed. And
Rob, you want to weigh in on that or indoor?
Yeah, sure. Our trail managers, depending on weather conditions, natural disasters, the straight line winds, tornadoes, all those kind of things. When we have flooding, we've had a lot of that lately. The ground's been really wet. So they have to look at what kind of damage is happening to the trail surface by weather conditions. And if we allow people to ride when the conditions are really bad, we're going to cause thousands of dollars worth of damage to the trail to ride for a couple of days. So it just doesn't make any sense. Sometimes you just have to close things, and we have to rely on those people on the ground to make those decisions. Sometimes we can slightly disagree with those. That's kind of what we have every year coming up in the spring. We have trail closures during spring breakup. That can last. Some counties have said, yep, we're going to open the trail on this date. We're going to open the trail on that date. But weather conditions are going to delay that sometimes. A lot of places when the trail is supposed to open, they go, hey, we can't. It's underwater. It's too wet. Frost is still coming out of the ground. We've got to wait. So we got to protect this trail surface because you can do just huge amount of damage when you get on a trail when the conditions aren't right. So we got to protect the resource first.
And I would add, it's a good question, legitimate question, but the relationships that our clubs and even our group and our council and our ambassadors have with that, when they close it, if somebody's trying to do something less than above board, there's a lot of eyes on that, and there's a system in place for that. And like I say, you can't make a decision that pleases everybody all the time. It just doesn't happen. Even us, we're not pleased all the time. But
and we're going to deviate a little bit too, because he has a follow-up question, and this is kind of in the same realm. Did anyone from DNR want to help with the tornado issues in Oconto and Langley County in regards to funding? If there's a storm damage that happens to a trail, and this has been happening a lot lately, there is funding available, emergency funding, for them if they have to apply and fix something. Jillian, do you want to talk a little bit about emergency funding?
Sure. So grant applicants can contact us any time of the year if they have an emergency storm damage issue that needs funding, and we will consider those requests in conjunction with the councils. If it's a really huge storm like in Oconto and Langlade, they need to work through the FEMA process first, go to the federal government and see what FEMA will cover. And once they can get through that process and they have a dollar amount that they need that isn't covered by FEMA, then we can help them with the remaining costs. So the FEMA process is a little bit slow, but I know Oconto and Langlade are working through that process to try to get some federal dollars to help with the damage. And we will try to make up the difference if we can.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly how that happens or works. And it's not, whether it's a tornado, whether it's flooding in the spring or summer or fall, lately it's been whenever, that process is there for a reason. And again, if it's a big event like the tornadoes and the straight line wind damage, and then FEMA gets involved, and then unfortunately there's complexities with that, but then they actually add or bring in funding as well.
And keeping in mind, on that chart, we're talking maintenance. There's other categories of funding that's used. There's rehab, there's
Right.
development, others that I may miss. But
And if FEMA doesn't step in, and this happens quite a bit, it reduces the time of that. So a land manager, if it's a localized issue, if a flood comes through in just a small portion of the county, that emergency funding is available through the state. They just have to go to the county or their regional grant manager, like Jillian said, and then they bring that whole process forward. It's actually quicker if FEMA's not involved.
right.
Because we every year on the council, we do set aside a rainy day fund, anticipating these things happening throughout the year. It's just being proactive about that and not having like say, no, we don't have any money, we can't fix this. But we have it there for a reason.
And I can't stress enough about the ORV Council, the Governor's ORV Council, what you guys and gals do to help advise the program parameters is invaluable. And a lot of people, everybody has opinions, but they don't know all the facts and all the information. And that's really what you got to dig into. So,
And regards to the speed of that, especially in Oconto and Langlade, there's nothing that our association or even DNR can help with that process. Now you're dealing with FEMA, and the clubs that have worked with FEMA and the agencies that have, it's just a long process, unfortunately. Just like trying to change a federal law.
right.
So yeah, it unfortunately it's just that is how it is.
Okay, good question.
So,
All right, we're gonna move on.
Nope, that's good.
So we're back on what's the high points in this legislation that we're going to ask you at the end if you will reach out and contact your lawmakers. So we talked about the low pressure tire, taking that out, how to measure the width. The other one is when I gave those numbers of registered machines, there's not very many municipally owned machines, but I'm going to use Adams Fire Department as one that he's on. It's a UTV that's not unlike a lot of other fire departments. You got backboards, you got water tanks on it. A lot of the things that you put on there to do emergency services, search and rescue, actually make it fall outside the definition in many cases of a UTV. And it's just silly in our minds for the little bit of numbers there to have that city, village, town have to go through all that rigmarole. As long as it identifies in your case as Town of Sheboygan Town of Sheboygan Fire Department, excuse me, I almost had to, that they know who owns it, so that it's not really geared to trail riding and that fact. So that's one of the things that we have heard from a lot. We wanted to correct that and make it easier on our towns. The next one, this has really become a large issue. Addressing and coming up with rules for auxiliary lighting of ATVs and UTVs. And this is based on feedback from our clubs, our users, our trail ambassadors, our land managers, and even law enforcement. I kind of poo-pooed it when it first came up about the machine lighting. Sometimes, newer ones are different with the big LEDs now. When you're riding at night and you can't see, so you put auxiliary lighting on, it really helps immensely. But now when you got 300 to 400,000 machines out there riding, and people aren't dimming the lights coming at you, you're actually forcing the head-on traffic. And even if you can't see.
Right.
And actually, once I started, I was getting blinded.
Right.
And so if we ask our municipal professionals to, when people don't use their common sense, when you get this many numbers, you got to have some kind of penalty to make that work. And I guess we're at that point. We've tried the common sense stuff. We said dim the lights. You kind of get in some cases, the symbol that says, hey, we don't have to.
Right.
So that's one of the safety issues that's become more and more. And again, it isn't just a few of us. That came from a lot of people.
Yep.
So that's in there. The other one, Greg had to jump off there now, and it's his birthday, but on our road routes, we probably got anywhere from 18 to 20,000 miles of road routes from what we can tell. You have to have headlights on all the time at road routes, but now you're going from a route to a trail and back to a route. You don't have to have them on the trail. Greg was riding after our regional meeting with the clubs up there in Barron County. Big dust, tree canopy. Says, why don't we have to have lights on in the trail as well? And I mean, that's where that came from, is through the clubs. So we've added that on. Let's just make it consistent. So if your machine is equipped with it, so if you've got an older machine that they don't have it, that's one thing. But all the machines now, the newer ones have it. So that's part of the headlight correction. So it'd be on all the time.
Yeah, it's making consistent.
Yes, on the trail, on the routes. We talked about the increase in maintenance, summer and winter. So I mean, there's other things in there. I'm not kidding you, but you guys, I don't expect you to fall asleep. But here's what.
Hold on.
Got a question.
We're still having issues with the FEMA funding in the chat.
Okay.
So we actually have one question in here on Zoom. Typically, though, if the ATV trails are maintained by clubs, not the county, the FEMA process is bypassed, correct? Jillian, do you want to have a quick answer for that?
I would say not necessarily. And I really need to get a little more education on FEMA myself because I don't quite understand it and I don't know how many people do. But my understanding is if it's a public trail, then it's eligible for public assistance because it benefits the public. So if the county is in any way involved in the trail as far as like collecting funding and being involved in the maintenance or rehab, then I think it could be FEMA eligible. I know we definitely have counties who are successful in obtaining FEMA help with storm damaged trails around the state. I don't know if any of you have more FEMA knowledge than I do.
Well, I think when we talk about FEMA coming in, that process actually stops the ORV funding from DNR until that is decided, correct?
Well, in order to protect the funds of the ATV program, we want to wait and see if FEMA will kick in first. Because if we upfront agree to pay out of the ATV funds for all the repairs, FEMA will say, okay, fine, you guys take care of it, we're not helping. So if we want to help stretch the ATV program dollars, we kind of want to wait, see if FEMA's going to help, and then we'll kick in the rest. If we move too quickly, the feds won't help.
Okay. And that, you know, there's, when we're talking about just the trail damage, you know, they're also helping with other things aside from trail. I mean, it's a big event that
Right.
a lot of things were impacted with. So, so that is the process. And I know, you know, there's a concern that that process wasn't moving fast enough and more should be done to help those counties and their clubs. You know, obviously, the clubs are doing a fantastic job and they put many, many hours into clearing those trails to get them back open again. And we thank them for that. We definitely want to make sure that the funding is there to support them.
But unfortunately, we don't have a magic wand for federal government
Yeah.
in the process. It's a big price. Okay, any more
Okay.
questions?
Nope, that should be it. Hopefully that answers
Okay.
those questions.
So we can end here at about 8:30. What we're really asking our members, our viewers to do, if you're comfortable doing this, is the bill that we've been working on for so long. We've got two champion lawmakers on the assembly side, State Representative Mary Felzakowski, who's always been an ATV advocate for it, ATV, UTV advocate, and snowmobile. She's co-sponsoring this bill in the Assembly side, and you got the chart up there. It's called a LRB legislation. It's not been assigned a bill number, but that 4792/2. And then equally our champion on the Senate side, Rob's state senator, Howard Markline. That's the LRB number over there, 3695/2. If you look at that other screen there, if you don't know who your state lawmaker is, that maps.ledge.wisconsin.gov, you click on that. I think you enter your zip code in or your address.
That'll bring you to a map, actually. Just
Takes you to your map.
click where
Okay.
you are.
And it'll tell you who your state senators. You don't want federal lawmakers. You want state senators and state representatives / assembly.
That only tells you that. Yep.
And just reach out to them by email, call them, however you communicate with them. And really, if you haven't called your state lawmaker, they're courteous. It's easy to do. Even if you get an answering machine, you can leave this is John Smith. I would really appreciate you supporting and sponsoring Senate Bill LRB 3692/2 on the ATV side. You can just say, hey, it's about the ATV program that Senator Markline and Representative Felzakowski have introduced. We think it's good for the program and we're ATVers and blah, blah, blah. But if you can move on this rather quickly, the bill sponsorships, I think Howard Markline told me was this coming Friday.
Yep.
Because it just got introduced last Friday. And even if it's past that date, still call them in because you want them to support it. It's going to go through public hearings on both the Assembly and the Senate. We'll be down there testifying. Any support you can get on there. And then once the public hearing happens, they got to schedule it for what they call an executive vote. And if they voted out affirmative, then it goes to be scheduled on the Senate and the Assembly side for a floor vote, which will be next year. But speed's important here because time is running out, and calls in or emails in would really, really be helpful. And if you let us know, again, I'm asking for a lot, but if you just hit the info@watfa.org to let us know, so we have some kind of record, it helps us when we're doing testimony as well. We know our clubs have supported this whole concept. That's where it came from.
And we will be posting this. Mike Bees is asking if we're going to post this. I will have that up in the near future.
Yeah, and again, this you're recording this.
Yep.
And we're going to hit some e-newsletters and our Facebook post. We wanted to do this. Any other last questions or comments?
Yeah.
Rob? Looks like he's unmuted. Do you want to add something, Rob?
Yeah, I do. Just remember, folks, your legislators don't hear from you very often. So give them a call. It only takes a second. Say hello, say I'm an ATV or UTV rider, a snowmobile or whatever, and let them know that you'd like them to support that interest that's important to you. Because a lot of times the legislator never hears from anybody about a particular issue. So if they get a couple of calls, that really goes a long ways. And typically that phone call is only going to take you about 2-3 minutes to do it. They go pretty fast. So we really appreciate it if you could do that. And it really, really helps a lot in getting these things moving.
Yeah. And I can't stress how easy it is. And I know people get apprehensive, polite. The people are great. They just take the information and pass it on to their bosses. And I think Senator Markline told us at our regional meeting, just what Rob said is people don't call in even when it's good. So it really does help to reach out.
Yep.
Okay. Hank, do you want to add anything, or Jillian? I think Greg dropped off. I guess not. Oh,
Terry's
Terry's back on. He was in the dark there. Okay. Well, I thank everybody for joining. We have any last questions that we missed?
No, I think we got everything. There was one thing back up here. Why is there not a standard set for trails and bridges on trail width where UTV are allowed in the trails? So I think what he's getting at is there are some trails that are not 65 inches. There are definitely trails that are 2-track, like small. Why isn't there a minimum standard?
They're actually, that you bring that up, we've been working with land managers and U.S. Forest Service,
Yep.
the state DNR, our county land managers to come up with, they're not calling them standards, trail guidelines.
Yep.
We think that should be released pretty soon. When the new administration came on, they're reviewing what we had done, but
And then, we do hear a lot about some people saying the trails are too wide, and we're trying to accommodate everyone. There are some places in the state that are developing slow speed challenge trails, where they're one way typically, and they're challenging to get through. I know Syracuse is gonna be putting one in soon, and really look forward to seeing what that looks like. But
yeah, and there's places where forest roads have washouts on the side, and our folks over at Road Legal have come up with this, hey, fill it in with large rock, make it so people can go off that roadway onto this challenge area to what they call slow speed trails. We had a presentation at our annual meeting on that. And so what we're trying to do is develop more opportunities for people to have a variety of different experiences, and recognizing that it is becoming a lot of popularity to make them smooth and wide, and some people want that, right? And other people don't. So the key is getting a variety of all of it, and for people to realize you can't have it your way all the time everywhere. It's
Right.
got to be a variety. So
yeah, I look forward to those trails being developed, and
good question.
should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for spending some time with us. Jillian, thank you for joining in, and Rob and
Thank
Hank
you.
and Terry, and even though Greg have some birthday party thing to go to,
Yeah.
and Jeff, if you're on there, but we appreciate, we got a great board of directors. I cannot thank our WATFA team. We've got other folks that are involved. We've got our club coordinators. We've got all kinds of people. It's a great organization. We really hope that you join. If you're not a member, if you are, tell others to join as well, so you can get them into the information. Terry, do you have anything to tell us from Florida? Oh, got to hit your mic.
I do not have anything to add except that the internet's back up and I'm ready to go.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody.
So thank you all for joining us, and until we do these, we're going to do more of these webinars as topics come up and organization falls into place. But this is definitely a great way for us to reach out to everyone, and
Let them reach out to us.
yeah,
Too.
yeah, it's a good two-way interaction.
So call us a little bit.
Everybody, good night.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.